I began last year fitter than ever before, faster, stronger, better. And then I started working out with my wife and everything went backwards. I'm not saying one caused the other, but that's just because her desk is off camera. I don't want to upset her. The reality is this: I compromise my training and my performance in competition in order to spend time doing those things as a couple. And it's brilliant, and I'll explain why and how we make it work, because it's one I get asked about all the time, often from people that would love to include their partner in what they do, but wonder what impact it will have on either one of them. First, I should make it very clear, my experience is just of me and Jen, so I do not know if our experience would translate to other couples. I'm twice Jen's size, I'm far more experienced in training, and at this point in time, fitter, stronger, and faster. That's just us. Your situation could be that you're perfectly matched. Maybe your wife or your girlfriend is ahead of you. Who knows? There's obviously endless possibilities. So I'm not generalizing about men and women or couples, just explaining our situation. So how and why did Jen start training? Pretty much at first just a YouTube thing. As my fitness grew, a few people here said that as I moved way above average, I became less relatable and so less motivational to watch. Of course, they're wrong on many points. I'm not way above average for a start. When you curate your life to present it on social media, it can be very easily seen as more impressive than it really is. I do a few things okay and plenty very badly. That aside, you shouldn't need to relate to somebody to be motivated by them in the first place. Rocky motivates me. I don't relate to Rocky. I don't box. I'm not American. I've never owned one turtle, let alone two.
These are my friends Cuff and Link.
And that is good, because trying to relate too closely to your source of inspiration is why teenage boys follow gym bros and take steroids. It's why women follow models that are never out of tiny bikinis and obsess over diets. Meanwhile, I can crack on with what I want to do, motivated by Stallone, but no need to get punched in the face or keep aquatic pets. Anyway, we thought following Jen's progression might appeal to people looking for someone going on that newbie journey themselves. And I look rubbish in a tiny bikini, but at what cost? A pretty high one in regards to training in the early stages. Jen had no clue what she was doing, and nor do I most of the time, but I am ahead of her, so I'd have to compromise my workouts to spend time helping her. On runs, we'd run at her pace, so for me that all got very easy to do. As for competition, I tried to do as much as possible with Jen. It meant my race run times were back to where they were 10 years ago, and when we did stuff like Hyrox together, I went from a podium contender to not breaking into the top half of finishers. So all bad? No, actually probably the most enjoyable fitness year I've ever had, at least in some ways. I no longer had to go off to the gym and worry that I was eating into couples time, because the gym was now couples time too. When I was doing races, I didn't have to be concerned that Jenna was left at home or just holding the camera. She was now in the thick of it with me. And a shared hobby and interest is for us a great thing. For example, the amount of snacks and junk food in the house went down when Jenna was also concerned about what she was eating. On days where I might not feel like training at all, doing something with her was far better than doing nothing. And I was certainly far less inclined to spend large periods of time binging on junk when I'm seeing her every day staying on track. And we get partners that both exercise and take an interest in how fit and healthy they are. In 20 years' time, we don't still have to look like this, but a desire to still look and be fit is probably going to lead to better things than if either one of us had, through our own actions or inactions, gone in a very different physical direction. In simple terms, at 70, I don't have to still look 50, but if I'm wearing slippers more than trainers, I might need to learn how to cook. So where are we now? Well, we have cracked it, and I realized this last weekend. We ran a Spartan obstacle course race together. I run many of these on my own and have progressed from very slow to not too bad at all. And one consistent in all of those from day one is that they were all completed in the competitive age group category, because I wanted to race. I didn't care if I was last, as I was on the first one I did, only that I competed. The alternative would have been to run in the open category, where people in general do not take it quite so seriously. They walk quite a bit, they chat amongst themselves, they take photographs and help each other over the obstacles if they do the obstacles at all. They certainly often skip the penalties associated with failing obstacles. In my opinion, it's an entirely different event to what I competed in, and one that has simply zero interest for me. I even go so far as to recommend anybody competes in age group, as Jenna did last year for her first ever obstacle course event. And while towards the back of the field, completed it, and got the satisfaction of proper racing. But this time, she wanted to run together, and as age group events are separated by gender, that meant running open. Accordingly, I went into Sunday's race with the expectation that I would want to find the tallest obstacle quite early in the race and throw myself off the top of it. But as it turned out, it was an amazing amount of fun, and once I had adjusted my expectation of what it was supposed to be, had a great time. And this sums up how we have both made our fitness lives sit side by side so well. In the beginning, I simply tried to incorporate Jen into my world of hard effort and a desire to perform well and be obsessive about the need to listen to the Rocky IV soundtrack. And when we would compete in events where I was tied to her performance, I'd be frustrated at how badly we did, and then she'd be frustrated that her excellent performance for her wasn't seen that way. Now we have, or I have, learned that there is not just one way to do things, but three separate approaches that dictate how we train and compete. There's my approach that applies just to me when I train alone and compete alone. And on the opposite side, there is Jenna's approach for her. And then the third approach is the one used when we do come together as a pair. It allows us to go into training sessions or a competition with a predetermined understanding of what we are looking for. It now means we often go to the gym together, but will then train apart when we are there. And when it comes to competition, for any given event, we will decide well in advance what the plan is. We recently ran a 5K race where I set off ahead of Jen and picked up a podium for myself. She ran her own race and was perfectly happy with her time further down the field. Just prior, we'd run a long distance race where we ran together, and I was able to set my expectations appropriately based around knowing I'd be supporting Jenna doing as well as possible, and the time we achieved would not be anything close to one I could achieve on my own. That wasn't the point. And so, in summary, as a result of a little discussion around what we want individually from our training and where we think we can collaborate, we now have a situation where we sometimes train separately and sometimes train together, and sometimes compete separately and sometimes compete together, always adjusting what we expect to get from the session or the experience accordingly. So on that recent Spartan race, watching Jenna compete and encouraging and supporting her while she did so is not better or worse than had I been doing it myself. It's just a different thing to competing myself, done for different reasons with a focus on achieving different objectives. There was a couple of moments when I saw a few age group athletes come flying past us while we were walking so that Jen could recover some energy while we worked out where next to take a selfie, and it crossed my mind that I'd enjoy doing what they were doing, and I have no doubt there were times when I'd be yelling at Jen and she'd be wishing that I was competing solo too. And all that leaves us here, where Jen is now free to enjoy focusing on her health and fitness journey at her level, where fun and pleasure are key requirements, and I'm able to focus on mine, where Rocky IV never stops. Speaking selfishly, the best way for me to be the absolute best performing version of me would be to train and compete alone and completely disregard the wants and needs of anybody else. But what we are now doing allows me to be the best performing version of me and stay married. After all, if in 20 years' time, no matter what I've done or achieved or experienced, if there's no one to turn to and say, do you remember when X, Y, Z, then for me it all feels like it lacks a point, even if X, Y, Z could have been better performances done alone. Ultimately, I'd rather be able to reminisce about slightly lesser achievements with an equally old partner that had joined me throughout the process. This video was now supposed to finish with a joke about a 55-year-old Jen in a bikini, but she's still got the other shoe and I'm not stupid.